Welcome to Soul Searching Space, a space to remember who you truly are, who you came here to be, and what you came here to do. To be crystal clear, going from black and white thinking to full color HD, working from the inside out, reclaiming your power, waking up to your inherent wholeness, aligning soul, heart, mind, and body. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another episode. In this and upcoming episodes, we are exploring boundaries. I'm going to share some of the patterns, fears, blocks that come up when setting boundaries that I've noticed working with my clients. And of course, I also have my own trial and errors with boundaries. So please learn from my mistakes and stay tuned if you want to prepare yourself for setting healthy boundaries. So, what are boundaries? Boundaries are clear limits that separate you from others. It helps to differentiate who I am, what I think, what I feel, and what I do from everyone around me and what they think, what they feel, what they do. Because that's what a boundary is. It's a limit. Even though we are limitless, we have limits. It's a way that we can essentially define ourselves as individuated, as uniquely different, and it's honoring those differences within ourselves and others. A boundary is where I end and where you begin. I like to imagine a garden. So there's my garden and then there's your garden. I tend to my garden and you tend to your garden. So there's a gate and I can allow people in and out. And the same with emotions, feelings, thoughts, opinions, and more. I have a choice. Boundaries keep our life orderly and peaceful. Without them, things don't know their place. Boundaries are like property lines. Think of your home. You have a main entrance, and depending on your home, you might have several rooms and doors to separate the rooms, and they each have their own purpose and their own boundary. Boundaries are about living an intentional life, a life on our own terms. Boundaries are also like containers. It's organizing things that need to be separate in our lives. It arranges them the way it should be. Your boundaries are like your skin. Think of your boundaries as that protective barrier. It separates you from the outside world. It separates you from another person. It helps you to filter your inner world and your outer world. Boundaries teach people how to treat you and let you know where to spend your energies. Boundaries are the clear definitions of where one thing ends and another begins. Do you know where you begin, or are the lines blurred? Boundaries tells us how to spend our energies. They play a role in every relationship, every job, every single thing you are and every single thing you do. It is so much more than saying no, and they help us to say yes to the best opportunities in our lives. They are an act of honoring your values and adding richness to your life. Boundaries determine how fulfilled and whole you feel in your own life. Having healthy boundaries with yourself helps you to own what's yours to own, so your property or your garden, and let go of what is not yours to own. We all think about boundaries as boundaries with other people, but there is a huge portion of boundaries that has to do with just you. And just how you are honoring your own boundaries and how you are tending your own garden, your own property. If you don't have boundaries, you allow people to trespass and they might rearrange your garden the way they thought it was best, like they wanted their garden to be done. And that's not okay. What if someone just walked into your property, into your home? That's totally not cool. They need your permission to enter your home. You are responsible for your garden, and other people are responsible for their garden. When you have a relationship, any kind of relationship, there is now another garden, a mutual garden, the garden of you and the other person. So you each have your own garden. Let's call your garden garden number 1, and the other person's garden garden number 3. Your mutual garden is garden number 2. So you now have this shared mutual space. This garden, you're only responsible for your garden and how the relationship works, but you have to let go of the control of the other person and let them have responsibility for their own actions. If you are choosing to meet the needs of the other person, tending to their garden before taking care of your own, you are spending your life force energy against your highest good and against theirs, because you can only control garden number 1 and you can only interact with garden number 2. So you don't get to change the other person and they don't get to change you either. When we learn to get our needs met, and working with my clients, I have discovered that the more in alignment we are with our values and the more we are living our boundaries and we surround ourselves with people with whom we feel really gets us and who understand and honor our boundaries, we have healthy boundaries. Generally, when I work with my clients, we work with internal and external boundaries, and then we also dive deeper into the centers within the center, the physical, the mental, emotional, and spiritual boundaries. We also have energetic boundaries, and since everything is energy, people will often sense your boundaries on an energetic level. Can you sense your own energetic boundaries? Can you sense the energetic boundaries of others? Are there people around you? And can you sense their energetic boundaries? So your internal boundaries is who you choose to be. Inner boundaries are how you basically hold the structure of your inner world and allow other people to have the structure of their internal world. and don't enmesh them. And the biggest step in that practice is to develop a safe relationship with your own body, your nervous system, and in your own self-trust. Your beliefs, values, emotions, and thoughts are your responsibility. Being able to distinguish, express, and not take things personally come from having a strong sense of self and strong internal boundaries and taking responsibility for your own inner world. Controlling your inner world is part of managing your energies. The external boundaries is what you choose to do, how you spend your time, how you tend your garden, how you communicate your needs and desires, what you tolerate and what you commit to, what you consume, spend, or contribute your energy to. It's how you live out your values. Your boundaries are the choices you make. It really takes the focus of other people needing to change or to be different. If we are clearly defined, we keep ourselves safe and we allow ourselves to experience our relationships in a safe way. We need to be able to create safety within ourselves first so that we can then embody that safety in our relationships, whatever types of relationships they might be. Let's dive deeper into the 4 boundary types: the physical boundaries, the mental boundaries, the emotional boundaries, and the spiritual boundaries. Physical boundaries is your physical body, your physical appearance, your physical reality, the amount of personal space and physical contact that you feel is comfortable for you, your overall comfort with sharing personal space with others. You have full permission to create a physical boundary that you feel most safe within. You have full ownership over what you tolerate or allow in your physical reality. Your relationship with your physical boundaries gives you the right to choose what happens in your physical realm and the right to speak up about it. You and only you are in control of how you experience your reality and how you follow through on your commitments. What are your physical boundaries centered around? How are you living your own life? How do you choose to rest, work out, go to work, and what you do with your life? How are you behaving? Are you behaving as someone who has clear boundaries or loose boundaries? The mental boundaries, these are your values, your beliefs, your thoughts, your opinions, and more. Do you believe things that keep you from who you really are? How comfortable and confident are you sharing your beliefs and thoughts, opinions, and goals with others? Do you know the difference between your thoughts, beliefs, opinions from other people's thoughts, beliefs, and opinions? Are you easily suggestible? Do you lose your cool when someone disagrees with you? Do you know what you believe? And can you hold on to your opinions as someone else is expressing theirs? Can you be open-minded and listen to someone else's opinion and thoughts about the world without becoming rigid? Emotional boundaries is your ability to separate your emotions from other people's emotions. If you become highly emotional or defensive, there's a chance you might have weak emotional boundaries. Your emotional state belongs to you. No one can make you feel anything. And this is so hard to understand. Often it's like people, they hurt my feelings. Yes, they did or said something that caused an emotional reaction in you. You can discuss with them about their behavior and how it makes you feel. But ultimately, what you do with emotions that rise up within you is your choice. Taking care of yourself, honoring your emotional health and desires, forgiving and releasing anger and emotions are your responsibility, controlled by no one but you. Spiritual boundaries. Who are you going to be? Who are you beyond this physical reality? Who are you really? How are you uniquely different? Are you able to separate your own spirituality from those of others? Are you able to remain connected to your own intuition and choice when you are engaging with groups or gatherings? How are you dealing with your connection or your lack of connection with a higher power? So all of these adds to how we spend and use our energies. Do you spend time overthinking about something someone said, which is taking your focus away from things which are more important? Are you holding on to things that happened days, weeks, months, years ago? Are you giving your time to things that are not that important to you? It's time to take control of your energies, because whenever we have control of our energies, that's when we have boundaries with ourselves and how we spend our energies, our own energies. And our life completely shifts, because that is using our energies to align with our values. And that changes everything, because when you honor your own boundaries, it's a lot easier to help other people responding to them well. By honoring ourselves and our energies, we intentionally use our energies to live a life on our own terms. You get to train people how to treat you. This is what I'm available for, and this is what I'm not available for. And the truth is, it's loving. It's loving for both of you. It's loving for you and your energy, and it's loving for your relationship with the other person, and they meet you in that space. Boundaries are not about controlling others. Boundaries are about protecting you and the relationship. We cannot change others. We can only change ourselves. Focusing on changing others brings the focus off of us. Our focus needs to be on us, working from the inside out and doing what we know to be true, to live from our heart and to live from our own intuition, following our own values with our energies and how we spend our energies, our time. All of this comes back to boundaries with ourselves. We are not using boundaries to try to prove a point. We are not going to try to fix someone, and we are not going to try to change someone. Boundaries are never used to keep someone out. They are here to keep us in. Boundaries are not restrictions, but a container that help you live in the most loving, compassionate way that you can. Boundaries are about freedom. Boundaries are not about punishing or hurting others. We set boundaries so we can manage our own energies, not the energies of others. So, some of the most common blocks and fears that people experience is the fear of losing love, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of rejection, the fear of confrontation, the fear of not being loved, the fear of not being loving, the fear of hurting someone, the fear of being judged, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of loss, the fear of being controlled, and the list goes on. We all have different fears based on our childhood and experiences with boundaries, rejection, abandonment, and so on. Which ones stood out for you? The impact of living with these fears and not setting boundaries can lead to feeling resentful, frustrated, bitterness, hatred, rage, sadness, wanting to fix or change people, feeling misunderstood and feeling like no one cares about you and your needs, like you lost yourself and you just feel drained. These are signs we easily give away our power because we engage with other people and we become caught up in these feelings of resentment. Sometimes we think we need to save other people, so we carry the weight of other people's problems and challenges, leaving them feeling better while we feel worse because we have unmet needs. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you're a peacemaker. Maybe you're a savior. Which ones of these did you find yourself relating to the most? Think back on a boundary being a property line. How are you trespassing or letting others trespassing? These experiences all point to deeper roots. So if you see these patterns in your life, there's a chance you've been disempowered in your own life, leading to allowing others to define your sense of identity, giving them the power to make your decisions, being overly responsible for the emotions and actions of others. We lose our sense of self-respect and give up our power. And over time, not only are we not able to not set boundaries, but we don't even really know what we want or even how to talk about it or express it or discuss it. If you are not sure what your boundaries are, it's a good sign that you are not very clear about your boundaries. Not setting boundaries allows people to do things that makes us resentful and hateful. Having healthy boundaries in place allows us to love better, show what we stand for, and honor ourselves. If the person in garden number 3 is trespassing all over your garden number 1, and that's causing frustration, it's your responsibility to tell them to stay off of your garden and to get them back into their own garden or garden number 2. Whenever these emotions come up, they are sharing information with you, and it is your responsibility to choose what to do and who to be. Let's dive into how we can cultivate self awareness around our boundaries and how we can observe and identify where we need to set boundaries. A good way to know if a boundary needs to be set is the way the interactions you have makes you feel. If you feel resentful, uncomfortable, taken advantage of, overwhelmed, like you can't honor your values, or as if you are not being respected, it's time to ask what boundaries need to be in place so you might honor yourself more and be the best version of yourself. Because you have the responsibility and the right to speak up for the things that you will and will not allow in your internal and external world. First of all, we need to get comfortable saying no. Learn to regularly say no to things that drain our energy, makes us feel uninspired, or take us away from our priorities. Fulfilled people have clear boundaries. Are you able to say no? Why? Why not? Are you consistently able to say no when needed and expect others to do the same? What fears comes to the surface for you around saying no or setting a firm boundary? How can you use your time intentionally? Do you tend to overbook yourself? How can you free yourself from overbooking yourself? How can you free yourself from being on call for others at your own expense? Before saying yes to anything, ask, will this benefit who you desire to become? How can you make choices in your own best interest? Are you a brick wall and let no one in? Or are you having totally loose boundaries, meaning your emotions are everyone's emotions and everyone's emotions impact your emotions? Are there any areas where you are being too firm with your boundaries when you don't really need them to be? Which boundaries have become healthy boundaries? In which areas of your life have boundaries become like a wall? Why? In which areas of your life have your boundaries become too loose or non-existing, and why? Do you have boundaries that might be preventing you from getting close to people who feel trustworthy? Do you withdraw when you don't get your way? Do you resent someone who doesn't do what you want? Where are you being overly agreeable and accepting criticism openly? Where are you taking responsibility for the emotion and attitudes of others? Where are you blaming others instead of being accountable for your own energies? Where are you accepting responsibility for what isn't yours? Are you able to stand your ground and be your own person? Can you ask for help with love when needed? Do you withdraw and isolate yourself instead of setting a boundary? Where do others overstep your boundaries? Where do you overstep other people's boundaries? Where do you respect other people's boundaries? Where do other people respect your boundaries? What is your default boundary pattern? Are you aware of the company you keep? Do they speak kindly about themselves and others? Are they compassionate? Will they support the person you are becoming? Notice how you react to different situations. The key to healthy boundary setting is understanding our values. What are your top 3 to 5 values? What do they look like lived out in your life? What do you want your life to look like when it's aligned to all of these values? And this is going to be so important because we are talking about where you begin, and you begin whenever you know what you stand for. Boundaries are all about what you stand for. You must know what values you stand for in order to create loving boundaries. In order to live the life you really want, you must be intentional about protecting your values. Where you begin is defined by your values, held up by your boundaries, which are held up by your energies. And they all come down to where you begin being super clear on that. Because whenever all of this is in alignment and your energies are channeled in a way that you have consciously decided, and you know your boundaries because you know your values, your life is completely aligned and it flows. Not that you're not going to have some challenging conversations, but you are giving the energies in a way that energizes you and supports the things that you stand for. The key to a healthy relationship is getting our needs met, but many of us don't know what our needs are. We all have different unique needs, and it is important to invest time learning about ourselves and the people in our lives. So, what are your needs? How can you learn more about what your needs are? Do you know how to communicate your needs? Where have your boundaries been violated? What boundary violations do you most identify with? Physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual? Where have you improved setting boundaries? Where might you be stuck in setting boundaries? What fears do you have around setting boundaries? What gets in the way for you when it comes to setting boundaries? How was boundaries modeled to you? Where do you lack boundaries? Are you blaming others for trespassing? Did you have a fence in place? Are you upholding these boundaries? Where are the boundaries properly communicated? Where are you hoping to get something from them by their trespassing? Are you trying to change the other person by letting them not follow your boundaries? Are you trying to get love, avoid confrontation? What are you learning from your lack of boundaries? What lack of boundaries confirms the beliefs you have about yourself? What would happen if you set boundaries? It's important to look at what you're learning and gaining from your lack of boundaries. Be willing to really look at this and face yourself. And this is, of course, so much harder than facing other people could ever be. So look back at your boundary patterns and start to look at what types of people you are gravitating towards. Are you repeating familiar patterns of your childhood? What type of boundaries did you see modeled for you as a child? Are your current boundaries rooted in these old familiar patterns? Remember that we gravitate towards the familiar. We want to see what we believe to be true in the world. So we will gravitate towards things that we already know, patterns that we feel most comfortable in, even if they don't serve us. Part of us are still comfortable in these unhealthy patterns. Whenever you notice this, it's important to set firm boundaries. How much of your backing down and lacking boundaries are rooted in assumption, stories you tell yourself, and taking way too much responsibility for other people's emotions? How do others perceive you? How do you want to be perceived? Where is your lack of boundaries rooted in fear? Are these familiar patterns with personalities where you spiral into certain patterns, certain people with certain personalities, certain power dynamics? Where can you easily set boundaries? And where can you remember to honor yourself? Do you honor your own boundaries? Do you honor the boundaries of others? Have you ghosted someone who set a boundary? Did someone ghost you when setting a boundary? What causes you resentment, hatred, frustration, drained, overwhelmed? What experiences drain you and what experiences uplift you? What are you available for? What will you no longer tolerate? What people do you need to disappoint and become less available to so you can be more available to yourself and your desires, dreams, values, projects, and so on? Why do you want to set boundaries? What is your goal with setting boundaries? What is your motive? How do you want to be treated? How do you want to feel? What is your goal behind setting a boundary and what is your motive behind setting a boundary? How can having boundaries allow you to love yourself and the people in your life better? Which voices and opinions are you allowing into your space? Everyone has different opinions about how to be, what to do, how to live, and so on. But we must remember that we are our own best experts. Are there some people in your space you need to unfollow because your energies are no longer aligned? So there was a lot of questions. Reflect on those that resonated with you. And if you want to embark on a boundary journey with me, I invite you to reflect and to have clarity on following questions until you're ready for the next step in upcoming episodes. To set yourself up for success, remember to start small. Pick one small area. Boundaries are very challenging to shift, but possible to do. The closer the person is, the more emotional the relationship is, the more challenging it will be to set a boundary. So start small and give yourself some practice. Practice setting boundaries with yourself first in, again, very small steps. Because the empowerment that we give ourselves when we create new boundaries and we stand in them, and even when it's uncomfortable and we create change, it empowers us to take on bigger challenges and continue to show up for ourselves. So here are the 3 action steps if you feel called. The first step is to cultivate that self-awareness and identify and spend the upcoming days identifying and listing your most commonly crossed boundaries with yourself and with others. And the second step is to get clarity on what boundary you want to set. So remember to start small. What one small area would you like to create one new boundary? What is your goal and motive with setting this boundary? Who do you want to be and what do you want to do? What values are you protecting by setting this boundary? If you're unclear on what your values are, I invite you to sign up for my free online values course. I will put the link in the show notes. And the third step is, what fears do you have around setting this boundary? What beliefs do you have around boundaries? What will you lose from setting this boundary? What will you gain from setting this boundary? If you would like support with identifying your limits as well as recognizing what some of those fears that are getting in the way of setting boundaries, please reach out to me. Okay, that is all for now. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your presence. I look forward to being with you again. I am sending you so much love, and until next time, may you remember that boundaries will challenge you, give you a better understanding of what it means to honor yourself and others, and allow you to experience yourself and your relationships in a new way.